All right. Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter with Knoxville, Nate and Big Joe. We're back on Thursday. We haven't gotten together since just before the Super Bowl. Did some time off, but we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got the Super Bowl to go over, of course. What our impressions over there, the new coaches that are going to be in line for next year, and maybe get to a little Aaron Rodgers. See the man, the Hall of Famer. No one seems to want anymore. So we've got a lot to go over tonight. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. Of course, the Jets. He finally started playing good, so now the Jets don't want him. That makes perfect sense. Who exactly are the Jets going to get? Is my question, because they act like they don't want Aaron Rodgers, but they have no young quarterback that they've been developing. There's nobody in the draft that's worth a shit that's going to be able to start at the beginning of the season, and there's no veterans that are available that you would want to bring in that are better than him. So, it's typical Jets. They're going to suck again.
Not to defend the Jets. I mean, I don't. I understand they have nobody, just like the Giants have nobody. I mean, right now they got Tommy Cutlets and nobody else. So both New York teams are in a bad way at the quarterback position. But I don't know if something's going on with the NFL where, with the price of quarterbacks and how much it takes, that they're not looking around going, look at what the Vikings were able to do with Sam Darnold last year, and maybe getting a retread. Maybe they look around, you get a Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield who goes to a new place, has to travel a little bit, but they've been around the league, they've seen a lot of things, and maybe it's a copycat league. Maybe they're sitting there going, rather than spend $50 million on a quarterback, let's make the quarterback position kind of turnover time. You know what I mean?
How'd that work out for the Vikings at the end of the season?
No, it didn't work out.
When it came down to a quarterback actually having to win them games, he couldn't. And he looked just like the old Sam Darnold and lost. The Steelers tried that with Russell Wilson, who the Broncos were paying $38 million for another team to play him. And everybody started talking about how great he was. And then he lost, 6 in a row to end the season and looked pretty much like he looked in Denver. So, acting like you're just going to, pluck somebody from another team and put him on your roster and do it. And I don't even like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a D-bag, and I have no love for him whatsoever. But let's be honest, towards the end of the season, he was the best quarterback that the Jets have had in quite some time, and actually was playing pretty well. So, he finally, and they're blaming him for the year before, when it wasn't really his fault, man. He blew his Achilles out on the 4th play of the season. This whole year, it looked to me like he was trying to get back to being confident with his legs. And finally, it looked, somewhat like he was, towards the end of the season. Now, I get it. The beginning of the season didn't look good for him or for the team whatsoever. But, that defense didn't look very good. And to be honest with you, the Jets took a turn for the worse as soon as they decided to fire their coach after 4 games. The defense looked like absolute garbage after they got rid of Robert Saleh. So that was a huge mistake as well. And, the best thing that could happen to Aaron Rodgers is, just like everybody that I talk about who played for the Jets, getting out of town is the best thing that he could possibly do for himself. Just like Justin Fields, the best thing that could happen to him was getting out of Chicago. Of course, then he gets screwed over in Pittsburgh too. But at least he got out of the Bears organization, which is good for everybody.
Well, what I've been saying, I mean, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm taking time. I'm not going to look to sign with anybody right now. Anyways, I'm going to pull a Joe Flacco. I'm going to keep myself in shape. Somebody's going down. So one of these teams is going to lose a quarterback somewhere early in the season, or something's not going to be working out, and you're going to be sitting on the couch, and they're going to say, "Aaron, come save us." And it might be the perfect situation for him. Instead of rushing in and signing with somebody like the Raiders, I heard somebody mentioning about the possibility of him going to the Colts. Well, Colts, they got Richardson there. I know he's not ready. He's not NFL ready, and he gets injured a lot. That might be a good move for him. But, if I was Aaron Rodgers, I would take my time. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be in any hurry. He doesn't want to do the OTAs and all those other stuff anyway. So it's like, we'll see. You know what I mean? He should be in no hurry. He's got more than enough money to live on. He can go smoke his stuff in the black hole and figure it all out. But I mean, it is weird the way the NFL is rolling now with the quarterback situation. I mean, you see the discrepancy, and maybe it always been this way. But I mean, there's only really like 7 quarterbacks really that you can sit there and say these are top echelon quarterbacks. The rest of them, they fit in somewhere depending on week to week sometimes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shortage, okay? But as we both know, it depends on your situation. Yeah. I mean, one quarterback looks horrible on one team, and then he goes to another team and looks great. I call it the Cleveland Brown effect, because I mean, these guys, you can't tell me that all of these guys that have rolled through Cleveland have all been horrible quarterbacks. That's just not true. I mean, Deshaun Watson's a great example of it. He looked damn good when he was playing for the Texans before he decided to quit. And then he goes to Cleveland and he just looks like he has no clue what he's doing. And part of that is, himself and, sitting out for a long time and, losing maybe his desire to play and all that. But also it's being in Cleveland and playing for the Browns. And, it depends on what team you're on. It depends on who the coach is. It depends on who your offensive line is. Who are your receivers? What is your defense like? What is your management like? Are they putting you in a situation to win? And it's funny, like Kirk Cousins acting like he's the worst quarterback in the world when, he won 12 games, 14 games, whatever for the Vikings. And then the Falcons pay him all this money and then bench his ass, 3/4 of the way through the season. That didn't make any sense to me, to be honest with. If you were going to go looking for a youth movement and you wanted to play Michael Penix, you should have started him after about the 6th game. None of this makes any sense.
You should have gotten a less expensive option than Kirk Cousins.
Exactly. Why did you pay him $260 million if you weren't for sure that this was your guy? I mean, right. It just made no sense.
Well, it is strange. It is strange the way the NFL is being run these days. I think, more and more you look at it, get the head coach right, get him to get his staff correct, including, I think, the 3 biggest positions: offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, offensive line coach. Get those coaches right. And, people, it's funny. You and I talked about it, and we defended it at the time. When Brady left New England, Bill Belichick might have done one of his best coaching jobs and just missed the playoffs because he went through, 3 quarterbacks that year?
Yeah.
And then the next year, he turns them back into a playoff team with Mac Jones. And then the year after that, he bottoms out. Everything falls apart on him. And that had to do with the fact of the matter, he couldn't reload. I think he lost a lot of his support staff. Guys we don't know about, guys in scouting and stuff like that used to be able to go out and find those rough edge guys and bring them in, and Bill's coaching would turn them into all pros. So, I mean, if you get the coach right, you saw Andy Reid was making the playoffs with Alex Smith before he got Mahomes, who took him over the top. If you get the coach right, most of your problems will be solved.
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. And yeah, I agree with you. I think, the best coaching job he ever did was the 2020-2021 season when, he had, who was it? Cam Newton and Brian Hoyer and who knows who else starting games for him. And they were very competitive and in the playoff race until, the end of the season there where, Cam got banged up, and Cam was not Cam anymore.
Not anymore,
no. I think we both could agree that, but he did a pretty damn good job considering he got him for $7 million. It was a good move, and they almost made it work. But then, acting like he was a trash coach and couldn't win because he didn't have Brady was just a farce. I mean, he was winning with freaking Drew Bledsoe before Brady got there. So you got to know what you're doing.
All right, let's go on to new coaches and new places, and what's 7 of them this year? Let me put the list up here. Um, you know, it's gonna be weird. There's good hires, bad hires, and gonna be. Let's go over to some of the hires here. Uh, Chicago bringing in Ben Johnson. Now here's a guy that was for 2 years has been the most sought after coach. Last year he decided to stay with the Lions to make a run, hopefully get to the Super Bowl. They came up short. He's got Caleb Williams. He's got supposedly a lot of talent there. What do you think about that?
I mean, you don't know. We don't know. I mean, you don't know what a coordinator is going to be as a head coach until he becomes a head coach. And the answer in Chicago is to start over every 3 years. And I think that's a terrible idea. I think it's stupid. And it's the reason that the Bears are never competitive, because their answer is to start anew and to fire their coach and to get a new coach. And it's hard to win in this league if you're starting fresh over and over and over again. So, I mean, do I think it's a good hire? I mean, yeah. I mean, he was the number one up and coming offensive coordinator, play caller, all of that coming into this season, and probably last season too. But we don't know whether or not he will be a good coach. I've got questions about that quarterback for sure. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like. But what are they going to say now if it doesn't work this year? Now it's the new coach's fault, or we going to blame it on Caleb this time? I mean, I don't really know. I just think that all these teams, it starts with the top, and I've just been scratching my head at the moves the Bears have done.
Let me ask you a question too. Just when you think about it, okay, Ben Johnson's been the offensive coordinator in Detroit. I always think, when I always look at it, whether it be the Giants, whether it be the Jets, the first thing I look at the coach they bring in, how does he match up against the other coaches that are already in the division? Because you got to win your division before you win anything else. Now, Green Bay, Detroit for sure, and the Vikings he's been coaching against these guys for 3 or 4 years now. They know what he likes to do. They know his tendencies. He's not going to surprise them with anything. Would it have been better for him to go and take a job in another division, maybe another conference, where they're not so overly scouted on him with this? Is that going to make his job tougher, do you think?
Yeah, it could. It definitely could. I mean, that's a good point. They're definitely familiar with him. And the other thing is this division's tough. I mean, the Packers aren't going anywhere. They had a good season. They were, facing injuries at the quarterback position, or they could have gone even further, and they were still a playoff team. The Lions are certainly not going anywhere. They were missing half their damn starters and still won 14, 15 games. Then talking about Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell is one of these guys that is proven to be one of the best coaches in the NFL. And that's taking a coordinator, putting him as a head coach. That's a situation where it has worked. Whether or not this will work, I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you, oh, he's going to be a great head coach. I mean, nobody knows because he's never been there. But I certainly think that's possible, a factor in that these guys are all familiar with him. Right? Certainly the Lions are going to know which plays he likes to call and what schemes he likes to run and what routes his receivers he likes to use and all that type of stuff. There's going to be familiarity there for sure.
All right, now we got Vrabel, who's going up to New England. I think it's a good hire for New England. It looks like they got a good chance at having their quarterback of the future in place. Plus, they have Joe Milton, another young quarterback. So he's going to be set up with 2 young quarterbacks to deal with. I think they have a lot of cap spaces, if I'm right. Am I right about that?
Yeah, the Patriots have some of the most cap space of any team in the league. So they're going to be able to go out and get people, and that's what's going to make the most difference this year with the with the Patriots. I like the coach. This was the best hire in my opinion. But right now they've got around $125 million in cap space, and how they use that is going to, end up being whether they're successful or not, because it's going to be very, they get the right piece because.
All right. And then we got Liam Cohen down in Jacksonville. Here's another story of a young quarterback who's on his third head coach already. Doesn't usually bode well for quarterbacks when they're on their third head coach in one place. I mean, we saw it with Daniel Jones. Not that Daniel Jones is as talented as Trevor Lawrence, but for the guy who was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning to be on your third head coach already, not a good sign. Are you there? Nate? I don't know if we lost Nate. Nate, are you frozen? Nate? I think Nate's frozen there. Hello, Nate.
Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. You're cutting out a little bit, buddy.
Okay. Like I said, Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, third head coach in a young career. It's kind of like Trevor Lawrence got to show something this year, and Liam Cohen. I mean, I don't know. Is he the answer?
Once again, who knows? I was scratching my head about this hire ever since it was announced. You take a guy who's won a Super Bowl and you kick him to the curb for a guy who was a play caller in Tampa for a year. I don't know how that makes any sense. And then when they first wanted him, they offer him the job. He says, I don't want it. I don't really like your general manager. So then they fire the general manager and then offer him the job again. Then he takes the job, and now they still don't have a general manager. So I got questions all over the place with this franchise. I guess it sends a lot of information at you when they play, several of their home games in England. But they've got issues all over the place. And I'm not sure this is the coach that's going to, solve all their problems.
And then we got Pete Carroll coming back, the Raiders, which begs the question: you can bring back Pete Carroll, but Bill Belichick's too old. It's kind of a very strange situation there. I mean, okay, you didn't want Belichick, who's won 6 Super Bowls, but okay, Pete Carroll, who's won 1. Okay, all right, I get it, I guess. But he's older than Bill Belichick, right? And it is a terrible situation for Pete. I mean, I understand that he's a quality coach, and I understand that he squeezed a lot out of Seattle at the end of his time in Seattle, but he'd been up there forever. I mean, his program was in place, his general manager was in place. He's not dealing with Mark Davis. This one is the head scratcher for me. It's like, if you wanted to get back in the game, Pete, I know there wasn't a lot of places you could get to in the pros, but maybe you should have taken a page out of Belichick and gone back to college.
Yeah, I don't know I know what the deal was. He wanted to coach. Right. He took a year off, and he's still he's a competitor. He loves football. He called himself, a football junkie, and I get all that. But going to the Raiders, I guess they were the one team that was calling him. But I mean, good luck. You're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid twice. You're going to play against Sean Payton and his young quarterback now twice a year, and then you got to play Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert twice as well. And this roster is just a mess. I mean, they have no quarterbacks whatsoever. Max Crosby is probably the one decent, talented player that they've got, and they're starting from scratch. I liked bringing Chip Kelly on board and having him. I mean, that's a guy who can certainly call plays. But there's just a lot of work to be done. And how long does Pete, want to do this? And how long are they going to give him? I mean, they roll. This is another franchise. We were talking about the Bears. The Raiders are the same way. They roll over a coach every every 16 to 18 months. And that's not a way, that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah. And then we got Kellen Moore. He waited around a long time to get this opportunity. I feel sorry for him going to New Orleans, another place where the players they had are getting older, and there's not much in the cupboard there.
No. You got what? 36-year-old Cam Jordan. You've got 37-year-old Demario Davis. You got, a quarterback who's getting older and older and was never really that good in Derek Carr. You got questions about whether you're bringing Alvin Kamara back. Yeah, I mean, I like Kellen Moore. I think he did a great job this year in Philadelphia. But, sometimes guys are just coordinators. We've seen this before where, their last coach, Dennis Allen, he was a good defensive coordinator. He's just not a good head coach. And he proved that at multiple stops. And so, will Kellen Moore be a good head coach? I have no idea. But Mickey Loomis has got a lot of work to do. And, they're not as in good cap shape as some of these other teams because they've kicked these things, kick the can down the road on a lot of these players. They're still paying Michael Thomas, who hasn't played for them in 3 years, and he's still counting over $9 million on the cap. So I think New Orleans is still in a bad spot. The good news is that they play in the division that they play in, and hopefully, they can be competitive if they can just, make some good draft picks and maybe pluck some dudes out of free agency. But as we've said over and over again, you got to have a good quarterback. And I'm not sure Derek Carr was ever that great, and he's certainly not that great right now.
Well, and then here's another one that makes you scratch your head is you're sitting there and, for years, I thought Kellen Moore was the Cowboy coach in waiting, and they go out and rush and get Brian Schottenheimer rather than wait till after the Super Bowl so they can talk to Kellen Moore, who's worked with Dak Prescott, who's worked with those guys down there, actually called the plays.
Yeah, that would have made a lot of sense to me, honestly, if Dallas would have hired Kellen Moore. I mean, he had a lot of success there. Their offense was flying, all over the place when he was there, and their offense hasn't really looked the same since he left. To be completely honest with you, and but no, they go and get Brian Schottenheimer, who's never been a head coach in his entire life, and was with the Cowboys for what, one season. And
he didn't even call the plays.
No,
McCarthy called the plays.
Yeah, no, it didn't make any sense to me. And maybe he will be a great head coach. He certainly has the lineage because his dad was a hell of a coach. His dad is one of my favorite head coaches of all time, just because he was a no-nonsense, old-school, tough-ass football coach. But, whether or not this will work out in Dallas, I have no idea. Probably not, since Jerry's still there.
And then we got Aaron Glenn, who came through the Jets. I think we already talked about the Aaron Rodgers decision. Kind of get it. He doesn't want to have to deal with a diva quarterback when he's coming in, but he is going to put himself up against between a rock and a hard place because he doesn't have a quarterback right now, and he's going to have to do a lot of work with the defense today. Everybody thinks that they got a lot of talent on the defense, and on the roster, it looks like they got a lot of talent, but they didn't play a lot of the time like they have talent. So it's going to depend on him, being the great defensive guru when he comes in the door and getting that defense set up, and then hopefully getting that running game going so he doesn't. The lack of a good quarterback is not going to hurt him so much.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough spot here once again in New York. I mean, how many coaches have we seen go in and out of the New York Jets organization over the last 15, 20 years? I mean, it's a revolving door. And as much as I like Aaron Glenn and as much as I think, he's earned the right to be a head coach, this is a lot of guys we've mentioned right here that have zero head coaching experience. And, you're choosing Brian Schottenheimer. You're choosing Aaron Glenn over Bill Belichick. I mean, that's what just blows me away. No one is making a big deal about bringing Pete Carroll back, but then, as you mentioned, no one's talking about why no one hired Bill Belichick. I mean, if I was an NFL owner and I wanted to win right now, why would you not go get Bill Belichick? I mean, I don't understand the lack of interest in the greatest coach of all time.
Well, and it's kind of the trend now. It looks like, when I talk to people, and I talk to even my friends that are fans, I'm always a big believer of build a program and hopefully keep a coach, excuse me, for 8 to 10 years. If you get a couple of Super Bowls out of that, great. If you get a handful of playoff runs, great, even better. But, now it seems to get, okay, give me one championship, and then I'll worry about getting another one in another 5, 10 years. I don't care. My fan base will be okay. And it seems like fan bases are like that now. They're like, I don't care about being. Just give me one Super Bowl parade, and I just don't get that attitude.
Yeah, I don't either. And we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and right now in 2025, Dak Prescott's cap hit is going to be $89 million, unless they can convert some of it to signing bonus. I mean, this Schottenheimer is already handcuffed. I mean, what are you going to do when you have $90 million wrapped up in one player? I get that the cap has gone up and all of that, but they've got people to sign. You've got to get Micah Parsons under contract. You've got to get a running back of some sort. You've got to build that offensive line back up. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done there. And, once again, I don't understand why you wouldn't go after and get the all-time winningest coach in NFL history who wants to coach in the NFL. I mean, obviously he still wants to coach. He took the job at North Carolina, who's not even a basketball school anymore, much less a football school. So I don't get it, man. That's who I would call.
At least they still have women's soccer.
They are good at that.
All right, let's just quick. What time we got left? Let's talk about the Super Bowl. Really, one of the most disappointing games I've ever watched, as far as Super Bowls go. We can get into the nuts and bolts of it. I thought that once it was showing that they couldn't pass the ball, I don't know why Andy Reid didn't do some double tight end and run the ball, just commit to running the ball for a while. But I mean, that's not his style, and Andy Reid's forgotten more about calling plays than I'll ever know, so I'm not going to take him on that. But my big question out of this, when you look at it, Philadelphia's been in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. This is the 7th year of the Mahomes-Reid magic. Are we seeing a changing of the guard here? Because Philadelphia is pretty young. And, to be in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, what do you think about the Eagles supplanting the Chiefs on top?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to just, chuck Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to the curb. They've got some work to do. They definitely do. I mean, the main thing is they need to get an offensive tackle. I didn't understand why they didn't bring Orlando Brown back. They had Orlando Brown out there, who they got from the Baltimore Ravens, who came in and did a pretty, admirable job. And they let him walk without even offering him a contract. And then, bring in, these guys who couldn't even line up correctly, much less block anybody. And wonder why, they didn't win the Super Bowl. I mean, it looked to me like a replay almost of the Tampa Bay, Kansas City Super Bowl, because it was just the same thing. They couldn't block anyone, and Patrick Mahomes had 0 time to throw the ball. But, you say you can't be the best until you beat the best, and the Eagles definitely did that. But it's not like they're coming back completely intact. Kellen Moore was the play caller. He's moving on, going to be the head coach down in New Orleans. And, let's be honest, the Eagles struggled the last time they had to replace their play caller following the Super Bowl. So I know they've already made a hire. I got to be honest with you, I don't know a ton about this guy who they brought in to replace Kellen Moore. But we'll have to see how that works out. The good thing is they've got their nucleus. They've got their core. The offensive line's in pretty good shape still. Saquon's going to be back. Jalen Hurts is going to be back. Devontae Smith will be back. I think A.J. Brown will be back. They've got Dallas Goedert who will be back. And then, they've got Vic Fangio in that defense. And that's what really has impressed me is the defensive improvements that they've made. But the best thing that the Eagles have is an owner who lets them do their thing and gives them the money they need to do it. And then their general manager and Howie,
He's the best right now.
He's the best general manager in the NFL. You sit here and tell me that last year when he went out and got Zach Bond from the New Orleans Saints, that anybody even talked about it, or when he went and got the offensive lineman from the Jets who they didn't even want, and no one else even offered him a contract, and Mekhi Becton, and he comes in and becomes a near all-pro guard for the Eagles. I mean, Howie Roseman just is up here where everybody else is down here. And that's the biggest thing the Eagles, in my opinion, have going for them, is that they have the right guy making personnel decisions.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the toughest part. I mean, as far as the Giants, you're in that division and you look at the Eagles and I'm going, well, they ain't coming down for a while. So the the Commanders seem to be on the right track. And the Giants got to find a way to get over to Dallas. You just got to hope that Jerry Jones keeps making bad decisions and you can get by them, and then worry about getting it together. And we'll see as we go through the offseason, we'll talk a lot more about the Giants and that kind of stuff as we go division to division in the draft. It's just very, very, very amazing that the Eagles were able to just pounce on the Chiefs like that. I just never expected. I'm not surprised they won, but by the way they did it, it was tough to watch. Actually,
I enjoyed the hell out of it, to be honest with you, because I still remember when people were ripping apart the Eagles for drafting Jalen Hurts, and then even the Eagles fans wanted to get rid of him. Last year when the second half of the season didn't go as they expected it to, not to mention their coach. There was people that wanted to fire their coach this year.
Oh yeah.
After the start that they had, people wanted to get rid of him and chuck Nick Sirianni to the curb. Well, they've got their quarterback, they've got their coach, and that's not the issue. The problem was they needed to get the pieces around it solidified, which they did. And now they've gotten a lot younger on defense as well. So they're in the right spot. And, the good news for them, too, is, as you mentioned, the division. I like them in their division. Washington obviously had a tremendous season, came out of nowhere. Nobody picked the Washington Commanders to make the divisional championship game. No one did. But can they do it 2 years in a row? It's not that easy to repeat like they, do it again, to run it back. And we'll see how that looks. But, the Cowboys are certainly having issues. And then the Giants, are somewhat of a mess, Joe. I'm sorry.
They are a mess. You're not hurting me. They are a mess. There's no item. I deal with the reality of it. They're so far away. I don't see. I mean, half of me's happy that they're bringing back Dable. The other half of me is going, yeah, but what has he got? They got nothing to build with. And they put the worst thing is they put this thing together.
Yeah. Well, I do like the fact that they've shown, an investment in their coach. They haven't just fired the coach every single year. That is not the way to sustain success, by starting over all the time. So they've got some stability in the front office and in the coaching offices. And I think that's a good thing. Now they just need to get the right pieces involved. And, I think it's interesting how Daniel Jones is still up in Minnesota right now. And, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Daniel Jones is starting next year, the first game for the Minnesota Vikings. That would not surprise me one bit.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if Darnold is with the Raiders or something like that. I mean, you see those moves coming. The one that I see that's floating around up here, I don't know if it's hit down in your neck of the woods, but somebody's throwing out there Matt Stafford to the Giants. And I'm like, why would you come to the Giants and get your ass kicked? It took you, what, 12 years to get out of Detroit and get to a coach that could take care of you?
Yeah. No,
Why
no,
would Matt Stafford? I don't know.
that's definitely not. That's definitely not happened. I have heard that Stafford wants an extension. He wants some more guaranteed money. He's threatened to retire, from what I've heard. So that is an interesting storyline to watch. Do I think he's going to play for the New York Giants next year? Hell no.
No.
But I wouldn't be surprised. I know they have dangled him out there for trade bait, but then they're back in the same situation they were in before, where they're looking for a quarterback. So I suspect that unless something magical happens, he'll be back in LA and he'll get some sort of money that makes him happy. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is where I understand. I've never been in their situation, so I don't quite understand their situation. But I'm sure he and his wife have more money than they ever need. I mean, they're done. Everything's fine with them. They're living out in LA. I guess she's doing some kind of a career thing where she wants to get into TV or whatever she wants to get into. TV's out in LA too. I don't know. Why would you want to come to New York and watch your husband get beat up every week? I just don't. You've got a perfect coach for him. You've got an offensive-minded coach who's one of the best play callers to help you out. Why would you leave that?
Yeah, and I don't understand why he's like wanting money. Like, he's got money. It's not like he's underpaid. He's making $27 million in cash. He's got a $50 million cap hit. His career earnings are over $364 million.
Yeah.
He's not hurting for cash right now. But speaking of cash, I don't know if you heard the news coming out of Miami yesterday, but apparently Carson Beck filed a police report where somebody broke into his complex and stole his brand new Mercedes 500C and his Lamborghini out of the carport. So
wow, damn it! And he's still in college.
This guy's making what? What do you get? $4 million? He's already spent $1.5 million on cars. It's like, what?
Well, that's maybe where maybe that's the proof of we sit there and we go, it's unfair. Well, yeah, well they'll blow right through it. It's okay.
Yeah. So, well, and Stafford's under contract through 2026. So, he signed a 4-year, $160 million contract extension. He got $130 million guaranteed, average $40 million a year. I understand wanting a bump. I mean, he deserves that. He's won a Super Bowl, but I think they can work it out and make it happen. And they, look at what down the stretch, the Rams were playing just as good a football as anybody. So if they can keep him happy and keep him in place, I think the Rams can make a run next season.
Well, they gave the Eagles the toughest test in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But all right, well, you got to do the man coverage this week or taking a week off?
Yeah, we may get back to it this week, actually, just to kind of preview the Combine is next week. The NFL Combine is getting going, and we're going to break down everybody that's been invited and do a little bit of valuation based on position. I got to be honest with you, man, this draft is very deep at the running back position. It's very deep at defensive line, defensive tackle, edge rusher. If you need a defensive lineman or you need a running back, this is your draft, bro. I mean, it's very, very deep in those positions.
Well, I tell you what, if they're listening to you tonight and if they're paying attention to the Super Bowl, you would say great, because the addition of Saquon Barkley and that defensive line, which allowed them to not have to blitz all night long against Patrick Mahomes, was the way to go. So like I said earlier in the broadcast, it's a copycat league. Who knows? Maybe that's where everybody goes. I'm like I said, I'm really worried if the Giants are going to make another mistake at quarterback somehow. I don't want either of the two. I don't want them. I'm nothing against them personally. I just don't see them as top end quarterbacks. And the other thing about it is the Giants don't have a team ready for them, and I could just see them doing to the whether it be Sanders or Ward, having them suffer just like Daniel Jones did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see an environment in New York right now that's any better than the situation that Daniel Jones was brought into. So, I don't know really where they're going to go to get their quarterback. I don't know where I mean, both the teams in New York are searching for a quarterback, and this isn't the draft for me where I would go and try and pluck my guy. I just don't think there's to me, I don't have any of these guys rated as a first round guy. I just don't. I mean, I know some of them will get drafted in the first round, but I don't have Cam Ward as a first round quarterback. I don't have Shedeur Sanders as a first round quarterback.
Dart.
I don't have Jackson Dart as a first round quarterback. I'm not seeing it, and I don't think any of those three will be, Jaden Daniels. It's just none of those guys are Jaden Daniels in my mind.
And I gotta say, I've listened to a couple of Mel Kiper's things, and even he is down on the quarterbacks. And I'm like saying, if Mel Kiper's down on the quarterbacks, the man of draft hype, you got to look at this and say, wow, taking their look.
Well, and do you have any faith at all in the Tennessee Titans at drafting a quarterback at number 1? I mean, this is the franchise that went and plucked Ryan Tannehill out of the Miami Dolphins after he had proven that he was not a upper echelon NFL quarterback. And then they brought him in and had him hand the ball off to Derrick Henry for 2.5 years, then paid him a butt ton of money, and then watched him disintegrate the Titans' chances of going deep into the playoffs. And then they go out and draft Malik Willis, and that doesn't work out. So then they go and draft Will Levis, who couldn't play at Penn State and who sucked at Kentucky. So I have zero, faith in the Titans. At least they got rid of Rand Carthon. I'll give them credit for that. But I do not have any faith in the Titans and drafting a starter for their quarterback position. Do you?
Not at all. All right. We'll call it a night right now. I'm getting ready to watch the USA Canada hockey game tonight, 8:00, as they go for the 4 countries championship. Another one of these, I guess that regular seasons aren't enough for fans anymore. You got to have some kind of tournament in the middle of it to make people tune in. So, going to give it a chance. They had a great. I don't know if you heard about it, but the first time they met in this, there were 3 fights in the first 9 seconds.
Yeah, I saw that.
So could be an interesting beginning to the game tonight.
Yeah, I like it. They were mentioning how, the NFL got rid of their all-star game and don't even do it anymore. The NBA, they don't play defense. Half the guys sit out, and it's like a shooting contest. And then you got the NHL where they're beating the shit out of each other in the first 4 seconds. So I definitely think the NHL takes the cake for their all-star game.
There you go. All right, my friend, have a good night. Stay warm. Stay out of the snow. And we will see you next Thursday and see you on Sundown Man coverage.
Sounds good, buddy.
Talk to you later.
See you.